Welcome to Python tutorial. I'm going to teach you how the basics of Python. So first, you have to install Python. So in order to install Python, just go to python.org/downloads. This will be in the link below. Do not download the latest one because it's kind of not a lot of things have support for it. Instead, just go downloads. If you're on Mac, download the Mac one. If you're on Windows, download the Windows one. I'm on Windows, so I click Windows. Now you have to kind of know how to use a Mac if you're on Mac, because I don't use Mac. I'm cool. And just scroll down. Pay close attention to these bold ones, these big bold ones. Pay very close attention, and stop right here at this. Nope, not that one. I'm sorry. You want to take a stop down. You want to keep going down until you meet. Where is it? Come on, reveal yourself. Python 3.10.11 right here. It cannot be used on Windows 7 or earlier, so if you're 7 or earlier, get out of here, because you stink. Alright, you download the installer, 32 or 64-bit, depending on what you have. I typically use 64-bit, but if you can't run 64-bit, then don't. Whenever it's in your files, just open and run it. I know this is a different version, but we don't talk about it. Whenever you run it, this is what should show up. Now, this looks very simple because it is. So you click add python.exe to path, and then you just press install now. It's as simple as that. You wait for it to install. I got kind of slow Wi-Fi, so it might take a while for me to install it. I mean, not that slow, because there's definitely slower people, but it might take me a while, so strap in your seatbelts.
It took me 10 years to find the answer to something. I forgot about it in 2 seconds. That's about it.
And now when you're finished, sorry, my mic kind of cut out when I did that. I got past the limit. But whenever you're finished downloading, setup was successful. No, you don't have to disable this path limit. I prefer to just not disable it, to be honest. Typically you would though, but I think you might have to reset your computer to do that. So after you install Python, we want to go to Notepad+. You want to download Notepad++. Now I'm going to link it in the description, but for now you just want to go here. So notepad-plus-plus.org. This is going to be our editor. So this is typically you would use an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. But we're just going to use a text editor because they are definitely different. So, download Notepad++. I already have it installed, but I'll go through the installation process with you. I will hold your hands just like how I did with the Python one. So, open up, give it the proper administrative permissions. English, next, I agree, next, skip all this, next. And then it'll install like that. I already have it installed, so I just installed it twice. But finish, run Notepad++. Just tick that if you want to. Actually, you should tick it. And boom, now you have Notepad++ opened up. For some reason, it opened up too, and it opened up a pre-opened project. So hold up. If you did ticket, it would open up a tab. If you didn't ticket, this is what you would do. You would go to the sidebar and you literally just type in Notepad++, and you would open it like this. Now, typically, you're not gonna have anything in your you're not gonna have anything in here, but I did. Now, it might be a blank, it might not be. You just want to click New up top here, and in this new one, This is where we're gonna start Pythoning. But so when we start Pythoning, let's make a code that just actually first we're gonna set the language. We're gonna set the encoding and stuff. So up top, up here, language, click language, and you want to scroll down to P and then Python. This gives me Python. So now it's time to actually get into the tutorial. Now I've already been recording for 8 minutes. 8 minutes of footage is plenty, especially because I don't like editing these a lot. But I will throw in a little bit. So one thing that's cool about Python is there's these things called modules that you can install on the internet, and these modules or packages, whatever they are, I have no clue. You can import them like this. So we're gonna start by importing our first ever module. Just type in import time. This is how you can, if say you wanted to yield the code for a certain amount of time, you would do time.sleep and then seconds here, not milliseconds, but seconds. So 350 seconds. It's in seconds, and this would yield the code, and it would wait. You can also import the random module. So let's go off and import both of these. Now let's start by creating our first ever variable. So actually delete those because you don't need those. Sorry. Let's create our first variable. Let's start by just naming it variable, I guess. And unlike other languages where you have to initialize what type of variable it is, like I know in I'm pretty sure in like Java you have to be like, if say you wanted a bool, you type in bool variable equals, you would just do bool variable and it would create a variable that equals a bool. Well, not in Python. In Python you literally just type in variable equals true or variable equals false, and that's how you get a bool. It's that simple. You could even do variable equals bool and it will just make it a bool, but that's not good. That's not my preferred method. So let's start off by making a variable. To make a variable, you literally just type in the name of said variable. It's not that hard. And now that you've typed in the name of said variable, we're going to give it a value. In Python, there is 3 core values. There's actually like 5 or 6, but we're not going to dabble into those. Actually, I'm going to dabble into 4. We're going to dabble into lists. We're going to dabble into strings. We're going to dabble into floats. We're going to dabble into integers. We're going to dabble into booleans. So lists, this is how you make a list. This is how you make a string. This and a float and an integer would be the same thing, but this would be a float and that would be an integer. And a boolean would be that. So these are all of the data types. Not all of them. There's still a lot more, but this is what we're going to focus on. Now a list can have multiple things in it. A list could have a string. A list could also have an integer. A list could also have a float and an integer. And a list could also have a boolean. So lists can hold any data type they want. And strings would just, a string is text. A list is an arrangement of values. A string is text. A float is a number with a decimal. And an integer is a number without a decimal. And integers can go into negatives. I'm not too sure if floats can. And a boolean is a true or false statement. It's not that hard to learn. So we're gonna get all these out of the way. One thing that I'm just gonna do, just for the sake of it, that I'm gonna teach you, because you're probably not gonna use this ever, but this is just for the shits and for the for the gits and shiggles. I'm gonna teach you the input command or function, whatever it is. So let's start off by making a simple little calculator. Let's do number 1. Let's make a variable for number 1, and we're gonna make this input. And so basically, this input command, it tells you right here, whatever you put in this little these brackets. Hold on, I'm gonna full screen this. Whatever you put in these little brackets right here, That's what it will ask you. So it's going to ask you just to number 1. And basically whenever you run it, they'll be in your terminal here. It'll just ask you to put in a number, and then whenever you press enter, it will go. Now note that this right here will yield all of the code under it. So none of the code under it will run at all until you're finished answering this. And then we're going to do number 2 is inputs number 2. And once you're done adding them, we're just going to print. And if we did print, oh, we know it's time to go on to our next segment. Concatenation, whatever the fuck it is. Concat. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it really. But basically, to do that in Python, it's as simple as just adding them. So say I wanted to combine these two. By the way, these two, the variables are actually set to whatever the person answers, because it returns whatever the person answers. But that's besides the point. If I wanted to combine them, I would literally do number 1 plus number 2. If I ran this in the output, however, say for number 1, I put in the value of 1, and for number 2, I put in the value of 50 or 60. In the output, it would just print 160. It wouldn't print 61. Now this is because it's adding 2 strings. Whatever input returns, it will always be a string. So if we wanted to convert it from a string to an integer, all we would have to do is do int and then brackets surrounding the value, and that will convert whatever it is into an int, if it can be converted to an int. It has to only be numbers to be converted to an int. But now, whenever I would run it, the output would say 61. So we can actually do this right now. So now we have a pretty much a where I just deleted all of that. Hold up, go back. We now have a working calculator. So, alright, now once we have our little mini calculator code, we are going to, if you were using an IDE, an integrated development environment, you would just run it using the IDE like that, because there would be like a terminal or whatever. But we're not doing that. We're just using a code editor. So we're going to save this in our downloads folder. You could really save this anywhere as long as you know how to get there, but getting to our downloads folder is the easiest. And then we're just going to name this calc.py. It's not that hard. We're just going to name it calc.py. And when you're done naming it and placing it into your downloads folder, it should now be, if you open up your file explorer, it should now be in your downloads folder right here. We're going to close that out, and we're going to open up command prompt. We're going to open up command prompt. This is how we're going to run it. Again, if you're using an IDE, you would just run it like that, but we're not using an IDE because we're lame. I typically use an IDE. That's why I have these VS Code things in the bottom right, but we don't talk about those. I'm just teaching you the bare bones basics. And then in here, we are going to press CD to change our directory, and we're going to change our directory to downloads. So now we're in our downloads folder. Do not type in ls. If you type in ls, your thing might actually crash, so don't do that. We're just gonna do Python and then the name of our file, which is calc.py. And then it's gonna ask us. See, now it's literally running the code. This is so cool. It's running the code up here. It's asking us number 1. We're gonna put in number 1, which we're gonna just try 11. Number 2, 60. And it gives us our answer, 71. We made a calculator in Python. Isn't that so cool? Now, in Python, the different math interactions, these are the different math. And so I told you how to add things, concatenate strings, and make variables. But I'm going to be honest, you don't need to know how to do all that. I mean, you do actually. You need to know how to make variables. But one thing we really need is to know functions and if statements. So to do an if statement, it's as simple as this. You just do if. Here, let's create a variable. Number 1 equals 10. Number 2 equals 72. To make an if statement, you would just do if number 1 equals number 2, and then this is where Python is different. Instead of, you know, JavaScript, because in JavaScript you would just do if number1 equals number2, and then you would do it like that. That's lame. Or like in Lua, you would do if number1 equals number2, then end. Instead of doing it like that, no, Python works basically. Python works on indents. So however many times it is tabbed in. The reason that's important is because it's kind of how things are aligned. Not aligned. It's the way that things run. So it has to be very precise with how you indent things. So don't indent things for no reason. Just leave it to auto indent. So to do an if statement in Python, you would literally just do if number1 equals number2, and then colon, enter. And then you want to tab out 1. That not completes the if statement, but completes the if statement. And then print number1 is equal to number2. This is a complete if statement right here. So, by the way, Python reads top down. So it will read number1 equals number 10. So basically, it just means that number1, the variable, is set to 10. Number2, the variable, is set to 72. And then we're going to check if variable number 1 is equal to the value of variable number 2. Then we're going to print number 1 is equal to number 2. And say maybe number 1 wasn't equal to number 2. This is how you would provide an else. You would just do it like that, and then you also have to tab this one in. By the way, the else will not be tabbed in with the rest. The else will be backwards on the same row as the if statement. And then print number 1 is not equal to number 2. So if I ran this, I accidentally closed out my command prompt. But if I run this, it would say number 1 is not equal to number 2 because 10 is not equal to 72. Now you don't have to do equals equals. You could also do is greater than, is less than, is greater than or equal to, is less than or equal to, or is not equal to. But we're just gonna do equals equals, and that's how you do an else state. And not an else. This is how you do an if statement. Woohoo! You learned. Now another thing you could do instead of doing else, if you wanted to provide a specific thing, you could also do elif, which is short for else if. But I'm not going too deep into that. To do elif, you would just do elif number 1 is greater than, or no, isn't equal to number 2. It's that simple. And then of course whatever is in here would be indented, and this would be not indented. So that's how you do an if statement. Now we're going to learn how to do a function. A function isn't that hard. To make a function, you have to do def, which probably stands for define function. I'm going to be honest. I have no clue what that means. But we're going to type in def, and we're going to type in the name of our function. I'm just going to name it function name. Now functions have infinite amount of arguments, but we're going to set up our arguments. So arg1, arg2. So we have 2 arguments, argument 1 and argument 2. We're going to do a colon, which also, if you've picked up the pattern here, whenever there's a colon, that means you indent. So we're going to do that. And then let's just say if arg1 equals arg2, print the arguments are equal, else. And this is a perfect time to do our cool little fancy elif. So elif arg1 is greater than argument 2, then print argument 1 is greater than argument 2. And then we could also do another elif if argument 1 is less than argument 2, then print argument 1 is less than argument 2. And now if we wanted to run this function, all we would have to do is function name followed by a set of brackets, not brackets, followed by a set of parentheses, and then in these parentheses, this is where we put in our argument 1. So you could do arg1 equals 10, or you could also just do 10, and it will automatically set that to argument 1. So we're going to set argument 1 to 60, and we're going to set argument 2 to 50. And then we're going to run this again. Hold up. First, we're going to do Control-S to save it, and then we're going to run it again. Python calc.py. Argument 1 is greater than argument 2. Boom! See, we're learning Python. So cool. Isn't this so cool? Aren't you excited? I'm going to post another tutorial soon for backing up more, teaching a little more about Python, but for now I'm just going to end off right here. See you. Please follow me. I mean, not follow. Please subscribe to me because I'm so cool, and I'll make another video soon.